You'll hear lots of kids outside. They're having, I don't know, some sort of a kid mob get together. It's the local street gang, I suppose. They're going to take over everything. Generation Alpha is going to not even wait for the Zoomers to come into their own. They're going to take them over, one and all. Anyway, we will be talking about many, many things. We've got, I think, 9 news stories to cover today, starting with Cayler Ellingson, of course. Trump, one of the few people actually talking about that case. You know, the 18-year-old that was run over for political reasons, and his killer is currently out on bail, despite and apparently not actually facing second-degree murder charges, just vehicular homicide. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. So if you run somebody over instead of shooting them, I guess you get a lesser sentence now in some parts of the country, and that's in North Dakota. So it's a deep, deep red state. We've got the Trafalgar High School teacher there, you know, the booba teacher, the person, the individual who is possibly trolling everyone. We'll be talking about a tip that I got from several people. There was a 4chan post actually on that subject. I still lean towards the idea is trying to get a frivolous lawsuit going, facing discrimination against your school board. You sue them and then you walk away with millions of Canadian dollars, which is worth like 10 US dollars probably at this point. We will, though, be talking about that and much, much more. There's a good lot of shit to talk about today. Brandy Y. The teacher with boobs is very offensive. They're not hiding the nipples. We don't show our nipples. Well, some women do. And some men do, too. You remember when Trump was trolling there? And I can't remember who it was. What was that kind of chubby dude there? And his nipples were showing through his shirt when he was testifying before Congress. I can't remember who it was. And he made a tweet about that went viral. And thought it was really funny at the time. Then he made his pervert alert one for Anthony Weiner. That was even funnier. Not allowed to have fun on Twitter anymore. Yeah, who was it? What was it? What the fuck was his name? That dude who went before. Yeah, very, very disrespectful. Who was it who went before Congress there and his nipples were showing through his shirt because it was too tight? And Trump was talking about that. Somebody fact check me on this before I get started with the news. I'm paying attention to chat. First person to name the individual gets absolutely nothing, but it's bragging rights for posting it. Barney Frank. Yeah, it was Barney Frank to Hollybad X2. Anyway, we'll get right into the news before we get distracted by by Barney Frank here. Here, let me resize this slightly because... Okay, that's better. Yes, Trump pays tribute to slain teen Cayler Ellingson. You'll remember, of course, not long ago, he was in North Dakota and run over by a long-term liberal who specifically stated to police, yeah, we got into a political conversation and, the claim is that he said something like, I'm going to go get my posse and come get you, which is bullshit. Okay, it's an 18-year-old kid talking big, even if that's true, and I don't really believe it. It's not a threat or anything. We're going to come after you. Okay, Antifa says far worse all the time. Believe it or not, you don't have the right to chase someone down in the street and try to run them over simply because you have a political disagreement with them. Even if they say something threatening, here's the problem. Let's say that you threaten someone in the street. So you have threatened them. You've said, I'm going to go and get a gun and I'm going to blow your head off. And the person goes to their vehicle and then pursues you. In the moment that you're fleeing, you're not armed, you are not chasing them. Do you have the right to run them down because they have issued a threat to you? No, you don't legally. That's second-degree murder. For some reason, they haven't brought that charge against this individual. In some states, though, I mean, if it were Illinois, it wouldn't even matter. You wouldn't even have to post bail. He got $50,000 of bail for running someone down in cold blood. Meanwhile, Rittenhouse's bail was set to $1 million for acting in self-defense. There is a little bit of a legal double standard here. I would like to point out, I'll read Trump's post, by the way, from Truth Social verbatim here. Trump is one of the few Republicans that's actually talking about this beyond the first 24 hours of the news cycle. And props to him For years, I've said one of the greatest achievements of Trump and the movement that he started is giving the GOP part of its balls back. For a long time, they wouldn't weigh in on an issue like this. They would have been terrified to do so. They're not allowed to say that there was a political motivation behind a violent act towards one of their constituents because it'll get thrown back in their face. Here's Trump's post. Cayler Ellingson of North Dakota, a great Republican patriot with an unlimited future ahead, was struck by a truck and killed. The person that did this was a deranged Democrat maniac who was angry that Cayler was a Republican. The media doesn't want to cover this horrible event because of the politics involved. It's true. If it were a MAGA Republican that drove that truck, it would have been the biggest of all stories. We love Cayler and will never forget. Warmest condolences to Cayler's family and friends. I wish that I saw some posts like this from other Republicans. It would be heartwarming to see that they actually at least pretended to care. But most of them don't. Most of them won't touch the story with a 10-foot pole. Fox, a couple of their pundits talked about it briefly. They're not really bringing it up now, except maybe as a plethora of leftoid derangement syndrome sort of stories. Frank Spasato, can we try to turn June anti-censorship month? Every month should be anti-censorship month. Censorship shouldn't exist. The Landlord Harassment Channel, you're too early. It's 6:30 in the morning now. Daniel, all right, mate. Hello from Oxford, England. Oh, tea and crumpets with the Queen. Oh, good sir. Yes, indeed. Spooky Pen. Hey, Sticks, I'm in Fargo, North Dakota, and we recently convicted a murderer with a $1 million bail. No excuse for that guy to get out on $50K. Disgusting. Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you're not safe from leftoid violence in North Dakota, what does that say for you if you're in a blue or a swing state? Joker 1 on Rumble. At this rate, before the Ellingson case is over, they will plea it down to illegal lane usage. Yeah, reckless driving. No, reckless driving, maybe under the influence. If you're lucky, you'll get him in for 6 months or something. Yeah, they will probably plea it down. And there won't be any, you won't see Wendy's getting burned to the ground by people with MAGA hats on because of this miscarriage of justice. I will point that out. So again, big props to Trump for being one of the very small number of people that are seriously addressing this particular case. Look at the Waukesha the Parade massacre. Again, a violent anti-white leftoid runs over a bunch of people at a Christmas parade, including a bunch of kids. Disappeared really quickly from the headlines despite the body count. Meanwhile, Uvalde, of course, is front page news even still. In memoriam, celebrating 6 weeks since our latest grift story. Clankalicious clankers clanking their clanks. Glassish over on Rumble. Drive time show donation. Sticks and friends. Next news story. We've got a protest. This one is not, by the way, all of these links are in the description that I'm referring to. This one's not archived because it's just a video clip. It's from a Twitter page, actually. Happening now. Students have joined protesters outside of Oakville Trafalgar High School. This is the Canadian booba teacher thing. To speak out against a teacher who has been sporting large prosthetic breasts to school. NoFetishTeachers.com. Here's my thoughts on this. I made an exclusive the other day on the subject. I didn't want to make a main on YouTube because it's an edgy subject. You don't even know, according to YouTube's TOS, are you allowed to call someone out for wearing a giant spiked dildo to school or something? I don't know. I thought there were dress codes in school. I guess that this teacher didn't get the memo. First, I'll give you some scuttlebutt. I have gotten tips from several people about a 4chan post claiming to be familiar with the matter. That post, and this is just a rumor, I have absolutely no evidence of this, so for now I'm going to keep that on the side. The post claims that this particular teacher was actually reprimanded in the past for toxic masculinity. That is, that him wearing gigantic, literally fetish gear boobs and presenting as female is actually a way to troll the school district. Number one, to humiliate them because they can't do anything about it. And number two, effectively to threaten them to try to fire or reprimand him further, in which case he can sue because he's now part of a protected class. Well, if you're part of that protected class, they can't fire you. They can't reprimand you. Even if you misbehave, anything that they do against you is going to be considered suspect. If that is the case, then this individual deserves immense praise for one of the greatest trollings of all time. of the woke and stupid school system up in Canada. But right now, that's only scuttlebutt. It's a rumor that was posted on 4chan. It may or may not actually be true. There's no proof of it. My opinion is that it's more likely about attempting to start a frivolous lawsuit. So you go far over the top. This isn't a person who's saying, hey, I'm transgendered, I'm wearing a dress to the shop class, get over it. Nobody even gives a fuck at this point. Nobody's even surprised by that when that happens. But when you wear prosthetic breasts that are bigger than most of the rest of your entire torso area, with the nipples protruding, there's no attempt to cover those up, wearing a sheer shirt, and when you're doing that and, stalking around in the woodshop class, leaning over the bandsaw, perilously close to having your fake nipples chopped off, by the way, and that could be a safety issue. I'm surprised the school district hasn't gone with that and said, okay, it's fine if you wear the skirt, but you're going to have to downsize the breast because, we've got footage of you almost killing yourself and possibly students in the process of trying to saw wood. And we're uncomfortable with that because killing students generally is frowned upon in Canadian educational system. I think that it's all about humiliating the school board and causing protests like this in order to try to force them to reprimand or fire him in order to make money. Because if they do that, they've broken Canadian law. When that happens, hey, I've got a lot of pain and suffering. You cheapened the idea that I was female. You're treating me like I've done something wrong. I'm just expressing my gender identity. And so I'm suing you. $10 million, though, would make me feel a lot better. I think that that's honestly what this is about. I don't think that this individual is genuinely feeling it in their heart and soul that they were born of the wrong gender. I spoke about this years ago, that you would have two groups of people in the wake of that becoming a public debate. People who are genuinely transgendered. They genuinely feel, and you can claim this is wrong or unethical or whatever. They genuinely feel like the other gender, and they're going to take steps to appear and act like that other gender. That's fine. It's not predatory. It's them doing their own thing. Doesn't surprise me, doesn't shock me, doesn't bother me. I'm not a moralist and I don't give a fuck. But there will be people who take advantage of that public debate either to make money or be perverted. And the latter has happened in showers and in swimming pool locker rooms and so forth. We've seen those cases. In this case, I think it's frivolous lawsuit time. That's what I believe is happening here. Anyway, sucks to be in that school district. Students were joining in the protest, by the way. This isn't just a bunch of evil far-righters that showed up from all parts to protest our woke policies. This involved kids from the actual school district who in some cases have apparently not been attending school at all because they're concerned about what's happening. I would think the Canadian educational system needs reform to stop this from happening. Eric Willinson, deafening clank. Huns with guns. You don't have to imagine if the roles were reversed. Look about how long they talked about Charlottesville from 2017. Yeah, true. Also, I think Joker1 on Rumble. Our shop teacher in junior high made us ponytail our 70s hippie hair before using power tools. Never reached the topic of elephant breasts and a miter saw. Lol. Yeah, if you had long hair and you were in shop class, you were warned that it was a bad idea. We were told, I attended shop class briefly before getting really fucking bored with it because I thought like I was going to be able to like forge a knife or something and thought that sounded cool. Then I realized it was just fucking around with wood and making like little aluminum figurines. And I said, fuck this shit. And I cut the class and took up a study hall in its place. That was 11th grade, I think. I didn't really fit in shop class, to be clear. But I remember the teacher told some story about a dude. I can't remember what machine he was using. And he had his wedding ring on. And the wedding ring got caught on the machine. It pulled his finger clean off. Ripped it right out of its socket. Skin and all. I imagine that hurt a little bit. And so people were encouraged to remove articles of jewelry and facial hair and so forth when they were operating the various machines. Probably a good idea. Yeah, I think what I want to do is lean over the bandsaw right now. I don't need big prosthetic breasts for that to be a threat to myself and those around me. Next news story. This is a fun one. Michael Moore predicts a landslide against the GOP traitors in the midterms. Thanks SCOTUS for abortion ruling. Yes, indeed. Michael Moore has become the Karl Rove of the left wing. He's predicting a blue wave election. Not only does he proclaim a belief that the Democrats will hold and increase a lead in the Senate, so they'll have at least one Senate pickup, he's claiming they'll retain the House of Representatives. I made a video this morning about why that's literally impossible. They will not retain the House of Representatives. The problem is that even if you had a multi-point swing in the Dems' favor in the final results over the generic ballot, they would still lose the House of Representatives. Why? If you look at the races that lean red or lean blue, many of those lean red races have Dem incumbents or were held by a Dem previously. You have scarce as hen's teeth numbers of races where the Dems have made inroads where the Republicans held it. It's like 3-1. And in fact, I think it's closer to 4-1. If you look at the toss-up races, the GOP can take back the House by a slim majority without taking a single toss-up race. They don't need any of them. Even if you assume a swing towards the Dems, though, you would expect at least a fifth or a quarter of those races to go GOP. It would be a slim pickup. They would have a majority barely larger than the Dems currently have, but they would take the House. I notice in this interview with Maher, where he says these things, he does not address one other critical thing: gubernatorial races. Kari Lake may be embattled right now. She's technically the underdog, although I think in the end she will still win. Overall, though, if you look at the gubernatorial races, the pickups that the GOP is probably going to get or has a chance of getting probably nets them +2 in the gubernatorial slot. And I'm using a conservative figure, by the way. I'm not even assuming a swing towards the GOP. Going based just on aggregates and assuming full accuracy, I would expect the GOP to pick up 1 Senate seat, 2 gubernatorial seats, and roughly 30 seats in the House of Representatives. That is, I would expect them to pick up the roughly 10 that are leaning red anyway, and about half of the toss-up seats, 25 to 35, somewhere in that range. There is effectively no chance, based on the issues that people care about, that any other outcome is going to happen. The problem is that Moore is suffering cognitive dissonance. He believes that Roe v. Wade caused a massive sea change within U.S. politics. The fact is that didn't really happen. People who are gung-ho for the blue state-style abortion up until time of birth laws, which is a minority of the population, already are going to vote Dem. People who are gung-ho for the idea of an outright ban or something very closely approximate to it are already going to vote GOP, generally speaking. The vast core of the public does want limits on abortion, to be clear, and that's what the vast majority of states that are changing their laws at all are doing. If anything, I would expect there to be an impact driving up turnout in blue states among people who are evangelical voters, and the surge in liberal voters that want to defend abortion rights would be in states where they're massively outnumbered. So what does this change? You've got a race where it's +20 Republican or +15 Democrat, and a handful of people have changed their minds based on one particular issue. What are the top issues in the country for the midterms? The economy, the fucking economy, border, crime, and things like that. Roe v. Wade, abortion is like number 6 on the issues list. It's not even in the top 4. It was for a brief moment right after the Dobbs decision. It's disappeared almost entirely now. The biggest issues are inflation and gas prices and jobs and things of that nature. So when I look at Michael Moore declaring that because of Roe v. Wade ending, there's going to be a big change. It's Rovember. You are the Karl Rove of the leftists. You're not properly interpreting either polls or basic reality politically. Poll after poll after poll show consistently that the top 3 issues don't involve abortion. So if a person's in the middle class, let's say they lean left, they tend to want abortion to remain legal, regardless of where the cutoff is for legality. They're also looking at their bank account and saying, shit, I had to take out a credit card and I'm not making ends meet after I pay for gas. And that's weighing on their minds every single day. How many days of the week does the average person have an abortion? There's your answer. There's why Michael Moore is wrong. Abortion is something that is far less frequent than gassing your car up. It's far less frequent than getting groceries. It's far less frequent than looking at the fucking inflation numbers that are plastered literally everywhere. You see it every time you go to the store. Source: how much do those prosthetics cost? I might want to arrive at some Democrat rallies this fall just to see how they deal. That would be an epic troll. Antifa will leave you alone. If everyone's dressed in drag when they go there, they'll get confused for far leftoids anyway. Far leftoid drag queens for MAGA or something like that. That'd be a funny troll. Nathan Sheenery, hey Sticks, do you have any non-traditional advice for mental health treatment? Going through tough times at the minute and I am looking for alternatives. For medical and legal reasons, I can't give you official advice on my beliefs with regards to these things. Meditation is said to be helpful. You can consider changing your diet too, get healthier. That helps. I find that distracting myself with enormous loads of work helps most forms of stress. I'm also a chronic insomniac. If I work myself until I'm tired, then it helps a little bit. Amazon, I knew one girl in high school who lost a finger from a planer and a boy who lost a finger chopping wood on his family's farm. New Hampshire was something else. Yeah. Now, one time I was driving a spike into the ground when I was erecting that little placard behind where I was target shooting with my .22. And I rammed one of the fins on the spike right through the side of my boot. And yeah, I've still got a scar there. It was not fun times. Thankfully, I had Jack Daniels at the time. I poured it immediately on the wound to help clean it out and kill bacteria. Didn't go to the doctor even when it started swelling, and I was fine. Mike K. Sticks, Trump and his team are embracing the Q thing quite outwardly. Do you think he may have indeed been involved with it? Keep up the great work. No, I do not, and we'll be talking about the legacy media scam with regards to that liberal psyop that is the QAnon thing. SP, what will the Halloween moral panic be this year? Probably people putting political flyers in the candy or something, honestly. Cold Summer 91, how shocked do you think the left will be shocked by Latino voters in the next few elections? Much more shocked than Beto O'Rourke will be. We'll be talking about that as well with his statements on that demographic shift. Kevin Daler, are either Martha's Vineyard immigrants being lied to? This feels like yet another leftoid lie. It's just too convenient. Another Jesse Smollett case. Agreed. It's worse than Jesse Smollett, though. Or Jussie, rather. Anyway, so yeah. Michael Moore has gone full Karl Rove for the election. Next one. Video appears to show Donald Trump supporters being told to stop making one-finger QAnon salute at rally. Now, I don't really give a shit about what security or whatever was doing at the Trump rally. I would point out this. The idea that pointing a finger upwards is a QAnon gesture sounds an awful lot like this being a white supremacist gesture now, doesn't it? We've seen this before. A bunch of evangelicals at, was it Mastriano's rally a few days ago? I can't remember if it was Doug Mastriano or who it was. Bud or one of the others that are running for congressional or gubernatorial seat. They had their hands raised in prayer because they were praying for political reasons. I consider this goofy. More is accomplished on your feet than on your knees. That's an old quip, and I happen to agree with it. I'm not an evangelical or even a Christian voter, but when I see a bunch of Christians doing this, they're basically laying hands on the issue. It's common amongst them, especially evangelicals. It's not threatening. It's not a Sieg Heil salute. And I saw the legacy media claim that this was some sort of loyalty oath to QAnon or something like that. Apparently that one fell through. So now the new one is to point your finger is a sign of fealty to a liberal psyop. This is what QAnon really is. It was developed by liberals as part of a conspiracy and promulgated partially by the legacy media, pretending to whine about it and think that it's actually real, to prevent MAGA voters from knocking on doors or going out to the polls because they felt self-assured by what they saw on 4chan or Reddit that there was a plan to deal with things behind the scenes and everything was fine. Don't worry, everything's hunky-dory. It's the opposite of a demoralization scheme. Demoralization scheme is you try to get someone to not stump for the candidate, not knock on the door, not send out the mailer, not call up their representative, not go vote because they feel like they can't win. You've demoralized them, blackpilling, so to speak. The opposite is QAnon. You've convinced someone that everything is perfectly fine. We've got agents on the inside. We've got people in the FBI, the CIA, etc. They're going to take care of things, trust the plan, and don't worry about it. And then you spew out a bunch of Nostradamus-sounding gobbledygook in order to make it seem like you're making correct predictions to try to rope-a-dope people. That's what they did. And liberals were the ones responsible. I wouldn't be surprised if in years one of these people, George Soros, one of his staff comes out and said, yeah, we did that. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. You should ignore anything QAnon. No, you shouldn't trust the plan. You should trust yourself and go and knock on a goddamn door. That's how you win. They're trying to convince you on both ends not to do it. They're trying to convince people that are pessimistic not to vote because they feel it's useless, and people who are optimistic not to vote because they feel like everything's self-assured and it's all part of some great fucking majestic plan. Neither of these things are true. You lose if you indulge in either of these fantasies. Opinionated Junkie, Razor is for drugs staying illegal. I say leave it to the states. The drug war is a failure. Why continue a failure? Yes, it ruins lives, so does food and war. Yeah, I disagree with Razor Fist on the issue of drug legalization. I don't want to legalize it and tax it or regulate it. I just want to decriminalize it because there is no constitutional precedent whatsoever. If you were to apply the logic of Bruin to other things, you would find no precedent for the United States government being able to ban any drug for the legal use of adults. Yeah, for people who are under 18, they're not full-on citizens. You can ban them from using the hash. For people who are currently operating a motor vehicle, they're doing something that could endanger others. If someone's sitting in their house snorting a couple of lines of coke, they're no threat to anybody else. So yeah, this is the new this, just to be clear. More propaganda. Aussie's Robots, good morning, Sticks. Can't think of anything that interests me today, so I'd ask for a shout out in my quest to 1,000 subs, but I'm curious which platform, if any, do you prefer people watch you on? So Aussie's Robots, there, I'll even click it. There you go. A little shout out to you on your way to 1,000. I don't care where people watch me as long as they're watching the material. Like right now, there's 2,200 people roughly watching on YouTube. There's almost another 800 watching on Rumble. And I'll be doing other things as well in the future with regards to live streaming, the one-off videos. I do one thing I would say is that if you haven't joined me on Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, or Minds, you're missing one of the videos that I make every day. So if you're a real hardcore clanker, you should be joining me on one or more of those platforms. Again, keep in mind, even if it's an illegitimate strike, if a YouTuber that does streams like I do every day gets a strike because the algorithm fucks up, they can be prevented from making a couple of streams in a row, even if the appeal goes through and the decision is reversed, because they can be slow at taking up the decisions. Takes them a while. It takes a while for the actual people at YouTube to compensate for their shitty AI. SP, will the Space Cadets be like the Space Marines and Aliens? No, it's not that kind of Space Cadets we'll be talking about. The Landlord Harassment Channel, Donbass citizens voted to break away from Ukraine. Yeah, which is absolutely pointless. The referendum's only going to be respected by the people who voted in favor of that and by the Russians, so it's a non-starter. James S., they had to pass a constitutional amendment for the feds to ban booze, but magically can ban drugs. Interesting. And that's really the point. The prohibition argument could be dragged out. If you were to apply the Bruin decision broadly to that kind of decision-making by adults, there's no way that you can find any proper tradition of banning American citizens from growing, producing, imbibing, and wandering around goddamn stoned in the woods on any substance at all. I would note that if you look deeply into U.S. drug law, you'll find all sorts of convolutions. Marijuana is completely illegal on the federal level. There are derivatives of it that are fine. Psilocybin mushrooms themselves are perfectly legal. In fact, you can get grow kits for them. By the way, if you actually grow them, then it becomes possession. But the extracted substance is illegal. So it's the opposite of marijuana, for example. Opioids are legal as long as you have a prescription for them. You can no longer get a prescription for cocaine, though, for your toothache. Long John John, if you feel hating your life, look up Russian lathe accident. Don't fuck around with this kind of equipment if you value life or limb. Crazy Loon, if we legalize drugs, can we remove the taxes on my booze? Yeah, there shouldn't be any taxes on any product, really. Sales taxes of all kinds shouldn't exist. Next news story, Eye on the News. A new counterculture? If the right captures some of the left's youthful energy and rebellious cachet, it would represent a tectonic cultural and political shift. I would like to point this out. Here's the premise. The premise is that there's some sort of uprising left-wing youth counterculture. It isn't 1968 anymore. We already have a right-wing counterculture. The MAGA movement is that counterculture. And it's not just, us millennials that are now marching on towards mid-age, by the way. There are plenty of Zoomers on board as well. The new counterculture is that populist core. So I don't know, the article's begging the question of if there's going to be such a counterculture when it's already self-evident. Hell, 4 or 5 years ago, I think Paul Joseph Watson made a video on the subject, and I happen to agree with it, by the way. The idea that everyone that was there at the time has suddenly become old, that's a blink in the eye, dude. That's like saying that all of the hippies became old people by 1971. No, they just became stoned on hard drugs, and then they didn't drop out of culture, they dropped out of Windows. They were still on the young side. I think I'm on the older side of that particular zeitgeist, in fact, which is hilarious to me. Cold Summer 91, do you think there will be a civil war in Canada? No, the Canadians aren't well armed enough to wage one. They might fight over the maple syrup supply if it runs low or something like that. Oh, there aren't enough Timbits. I've got mine. Stay away. I have a bolt-action rifle left to me by my great-grandfather to defend my Timbits with. Looking through some chats. By the way, let me check. Just a second. Yeah, pretty good. Next one. Scammers stole an insane amount of pandemic unemployment money. You will never believe how much money, apparently, according to the Department of Labor, by the way. They made the fucking report. These people don't want to admit to you how goddamn Swiss cheese full of holes this program was, because this was considered a big thing by both the Trump and Biden administrations. $46 billion. That's the estimate of the amount of fraud that came with this. So people were not actually unemployed, but were getting the money. People registered under dead names. People registered in multiple states. $46 billion is quite a bit of money. It's a substantial chunk of all of the money from the program. So unfortunately, now we have to live with the fact that if you paid taxes at all, a significant amount of tax money from you is sitting in the pocket of some fraudster that decided to defraud the Department of Labor. Thanks. That saved a lot of lives from the China virus. It's very great. Inspector General Larry D. Turner, U.S. Department of Labor, announced that the Office of Inspector General's investigations have resulted in more than 1,000 individuals being charged with crimes involving unemployment insurance fraud since the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020. The DOL-OIG also issued an alert memorandum identifying $45.6 billion in potentially fraudulent UI benefits paid to individuals, with Social Security numbers 1, filed in multiple states, 2, of deceased persons, 3, filled with suspicious email accounts, and 4, federal prisoners. People in prison decided to use fraudulent Social Security numbers in order to get more in their commissary. How wonderful. Jesus. Where's my cut of that $46 billion? Can I have some? Can I at least have my share back? You know, I have to pay taxes and now I have to deal with this shit. And the problem is that when you attempt to go after that money, you have to pay a bunch of agents to go get it. So it doesn't really matter. You might as well just allow them to get away with the fraud. It's probably more expensive to go after the fuckers. Yeah, wonderful. The office also found pandemic relief programs were vulnerable for abuse, given how much money the federal government was quickly pushing out the door without proper accountability and tracking programs or mechanisms in place. Did I not say that it was pig in a pokerism when they made these investments into this? That when you take tens or hundreds of billions of dollars and you put it out there and you don't have any real checks or balances on it, it's just basically an online form. No shit, there might be problems with it. Especially when you've locked everything down. In some cases, I don't even really blame people. Yeah, you committed fraud. You broke the law at a federal level. That's not good. But you can kind of understand it. Someone got axed from their job because their job's not allowed to open. They're on furlough. They're sitting at home drawing a part of their salary if they're lucky. They've got no income maybe, or they're living on fumes because Biden has decided to wreck the economy, along with blue state governors mainly. They're even more responsible than Beijing Biden, by the way. And you say, well, you know, there's this web page. I can put in Social Security numbers and, you know, hope to get some money. At least I'll be able to feed my kids. I don't know. It's sort of like the equivalent of stealing a loaf of bread to make sure that you're capable of putting food in your stomach. Yeah, it might be against the law, but in some cases, is it morally justified? Yeah, you could make that argument. I just wish that the members of government, when they do this, they should have to pay for it with their own fortunes. Instead of taking taxpayer money, why don't we just confiscate some of Nancy Pelosi's refrigerators? We can raffle them off to a good cause, can't we? You can feed a lot of people for $40,000, $50,000, which is probably what her fucking refrigerators alone are worth. Here's my $20 a bar ice cream. It's got gold plating and everything. Why don't we just take their money and let frauds take their money? Because they are frauds. It's just one thief robbing another at that point. Next one, the party is over. How Meta, Facebook basically, and Google are using recession fears to clean house. It looks like the boom days are fading in big tech, even if the cash is still flowing. Go through this article. It's basically the idea of the stagnation, the wilting of Google and of Meta, Facebook and Instagram, basically. It's happening to more companies too. This is going to be blamed on the Biden recession. But really, it's been a long time coming. The real reason for this is that they're stopping being competitive. They've allowed competitors to rise up where they have forced people out of their companies. So YouTube, for instance, has banned limitless millions and millions of people for things that are against no law, that don't really offend anyone. They've banned people with millions of subscribers and driven them to other platforms. Now they're going to be stagnating in their market share. Well, no shit, Rumble just went live on NASDAQ. TikTok became a big thing. YouTube has to invent YouTube Shorts, even though it already had short form videos, just to try to compensate. It's not working too well. YouTube Shorts is just a bunch of fucking spam. There's nothing talented there. There's nothing of any actual note. Nobody under 30 is even fucking using it probably. They're all using TikTok. And then you've got Rumble and other sites, BitChute for one-offs, Rumble certainly for streaming, where I'm streaming right now, eating into your bottom line. As far as Meta goes, who even fucking uses Facebook? Facebook banned so many people and retarded so many of its functions. No goddamn shit. People stopped using it. The average age of a Facebook user now is probably 55, 60 years old. And as far as Instagram, it's never going to be a winning bet anyway, because all it is a bunch of vapid people posting selfies. Oh, wow. What heavy-hitting commentary you're going to get from Instagram. I like how they still deign to call someone with a lot of Instagram followers an influencer. Yeah, they influence you to bury your head in the sand and hope you don't have to fucking see their page again. Facebook is Facebook is dead at this point. You would have been better off investing in MySpace. Stoffen Helsing, $5, no comment. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, Per Anderson, I'm not saying that TikTok has talent on it either. I'm saying that it's functional, that people that are making that kind of video, they're going to gravitate towards there where there's a younger user base as opposed to YouTube, which starts out more with one-off and now is moving more and more towards streaming. So it's becoming a major streaming service. With TikTok, they're trying to eat into that the same way YouTube's trying to undercut TikTok with shorts. Neither of these, by the way, will work in the end. Green Glassful. Has Maloney won in Italy yet, though? Italia, baby. I don't know. I think we're still waiting on final results and will be most of the day. Cold Warrior, please don't beat up on Mike Moore. He's heavy, unwise, and not good-looking. The Supreme Being already frowns on him. Yeah, poor Michael Moore, the Karl Rove of liberals. E100 Omega 123, my friend is starting his own YouTube channel, but the audio in his uploads are super quiet. What type of mic and recording program do you use? I have an AT2020 microphone and a Logitech Brio webcam, and I use StreamYard. It's very simple. 213th AIB. Will the regime ship substantial amounts of U.S. food and energy to Europe to prop them up this winter? I don't know that they'll have substantial enough stocks of either one to do so. That's the problem. Next story. Air Force brass has little to say on woke initiatives despite backlash. Yes, the Air Force Academy, apparently in order to make more effective war-fighting units. They don't call them soldiers now. They're war fighters, by the way. It's even branded on the U.S. MREs that they give to the troops. Now, there are worse monikers. I'll give that one a pass. Is full of woke horseshit. So Air Force cadets, people being trained potentially to become officers, like go and become a captain or some shit, pilots and so forth. These people are being taught not to say mom and dad or girlfriend and boyfriend and other gendered language because they're trying to be more inclusive. Bullshit. What you should do is make everything less inclusive. You'd get more recruits. That was the whole point. Originally, it's sort of like an oorah brotherhood camaraderie, and that caused people to sign up. You have wrecked the U.S. military. You're not going to get anyone to sign up for the U.S. military based on the fact that they don't have to face gendered language. It accomplishes nothing. How many millions of dollars were put into the focus group for the U.S. Air Force that had to greenlight all of the language here and compile everything and do the normal bureaucratic grind, making sure everything is in triplicate? How many millions of taxpayer dollars were wasted for something that will absolutely not have any impact whatsoever positively on the U.S. Armed Forces? The Air Force has one reason to exist: fucking kill people. The U.S. military shouldn't be woke because the only purpose of the U.S. military is to blow people up. That's really it. Blow people up, shoot people, etc. That's what we fucking pay you for. That's the whole goal. Beat up on our enemies so that we hopefully don't have to. Rather grave humor, rather depraved at times, certainly lent towards warmongering and world policing. But that is effectively the point. Militaries are not just for show. If you're just going to have them for show, then you don't even need to give them guns. Give them dress uniforms and sabers and shit and parade them down the street. That sounds fun. Have an all-for-show military or something like that, and then just arm the population. Okay, I can go for that. It'd be a lot cheaper now, wouldn't it? If you're going to have, though, an Air Force that is tasked with defending not just the United States, but significant amounts of land in other countries, running nuclear-capable bombers and running sorties constantly to try to get rid of terrorists or whatever, what the hell does this accomplish? You're not allowed to write home to mom anymore. You have to write home to Zir, I suppose. Are you going to have like people's uniforms? Are they going to have their pronouns stitched on them from now on? Yeah, I think that we have another reason to garner that the rest of the world does not take the United States as seriously as it did under Donald Trump. Zach the Celtics guy. Even Bill Maher told Moore to shut the hell up. Yeah, it's definitely quite something to see. Michael Moore is best known for making Sicko. I watched that a couple of times, and it's the only documentary that he made that was halfway decent, even though it's filled with hyperbolic bullshit too. I like the part where Fidel Castro is depicted as the devil in a hyperbolic reference to how the right wing sees communism. Spike 11117, Instagram flag a post about Trump going to ground zero after 9/11. Claimed it's not provable that he was there. Also, a beer shortage is coming. Yay. Yeah, that's how you know World War III is coming. Deprive the Germans of their beer and see what happens. Even if your fucking beer sucks, by the way. I've tried several German beers and I didn't like any of them. What the hell are you putting in it? One of them tasted, it was like you put salt in your beer or something. It's weird. Bear kits, what's worse, California or Canada? California's got better weather. At least parts of it do. Seeing sites, would you support legislation that would forbid financial companies from denying service because of a customer's political and social views? Absolutely. ESG should end. It's the same as critical race theory. It is commie propaganda. It's being promulgated by literal communists, just to be clear, to try to weaken the Western world. And it should be banned outright. And the final news story here that we've got, Beto O'Rourke blames Biden for more Texas Latinos voting GOP. Didn't spend a dime or a day in the border region. Beto, ironically, is making the same point about the Biden regime that I've made with regards to the border crisis in general. That is that you've got Kamala Harris, the border czar. Her visit to the border was to go to El Paso, far away from the actual crossing, by the way, to one post for a photo op and then quickly leaving. Otherwise, she's never been within shouting distance of the U.S. border. Biden doesn't visit. The legacy media doesn't visit either. They were all gung-ho for going down there and demanding to take pictures of the kids in blankets in the Obama cages from 2016 to 2020. You'll notice that they haven't done it in the last year and a half. There's a fucking reason for this. The problem goes away if you don't talk about it. That's basically their concept. Here's the thing, though. Beto is wrong. Joe Biden cannot singularly be blamed for the shift of Latino voters towards the GOP. It's a shift that began before his presidency began. The shift already began because Trump's pro-job, pro-economic policies. Trump's policies of tax relief, supporting small businesses, and securing the border were wildly popular amongst Latino voters. Beto O'Rourke did more to cheapen their image as a party with Latino or Latinx voters than Biden has, actually. Do you remember when he was on stage down there in El Paso doing a competing rally, a pathetic one, when Trump was on stage? And his fans were outnumbered 10-1, but the legacy media pretended otherwise, again, for propagandistic purposes. Do you remember what Beto said on that very stage? Oh, we shouldn't be building more border wall. He was doing his televangelist thing. He sort of retired that. He pretends to be a little bit more calm now. Oh, we shouldn't be building any more border walls. Oh, starts speaking in tongues, blah, 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 blah. No, we should be tearing down existing walls. Yeah, what a great message. You're right next to the U.S. border. You're talking to a bunch of Latinos. Some of these people are business owners, and you want to deprive them of being able to hike wages, invest, or do anything else because there will be a bunch of people camping out in their backyard. Yeah, how wonderful. Yes, some third-generation Mexican immigrant who's not really an immigrant at all, who's never fucking visited Mexico and speaks broken Spanish, has so much in common with a Venezuelan asylum seeker or a Panamanian. You call them Latino, you're grouping in people from a dozen different fucking cultures together in totally different economic situations. This is what pisses people off. When you lump them in and you don't pay attention to the individualism with which they operate, it tends to piss them off. White people, by the way, are turned off by the Dem Party for the same reason. Although that's not adulation for the broad, wonderful, glowing Hispanic community. Again, Hispanic is not a race. It's a conglomerate of different groups of people civically and genetically. No, white people are castigated by these same liberals. Well, like guilt. We need reparations and stuff. Yeah, oh, your ancestors were Irish? Yeah, your great-great-grandmother was an indentured servant who died after her third kid? Well, it's basically the same as this multi-million-dollar WASP whose family was here since the 1600s on a plantation, so you need to fucking pay up. You have to look at people as individuals, and Beto O'Rourke and people like that simply don't do so. Also, there's a civic appreciation that I saw down there, and this was years ago, but I'm sure it's still there to some degree. That's more than what I see in liberal states, more than what I see in, like, Vermont. See more U.S. flags flying next to the Mexican border than you do in the fucking heartland. Musically assured destruction. Will Dems start washing their hands of Biden as 2024 approaches? And Beto's literally doing that here. How do you think will Dems cope with that? He's supposed to be the most popular president ever. There was an article comparing him to Buchanan earlier that I thought about plopping in here as a news story, so I'll just answer with that. Look on RCP if you don't believe me. Aaron C., do you think there's a greater than 50% chance of nuclear war in the coming weeks and months? No. The chance is very remote, but it is there, and always has been, and unfortunately always will be until it actually happens, which is, in my opinion, inevitable in the long span of time. Turgeson, the older I get, the more boring my taste in beer gets. Bland lager until I die. Roxy Olamata, I'm pumped. I caught you live, Sticks. Right on. Alamandorius, finally after days, it's letting me super hey Sticks. Had questions for days but couldn't ask because it was telling me I wasn't using CAD. Also, Canada isn't an oven in the summer like Cali. Our leaders are the same, though. Well, Northern California is not an oven in the summer. Yeah, I don't think that there's any other new news. So yeah, Beto is blaming Biden for his own problems. He's saying, well, Biden didn't spend a single dime down here. Yes, I'm sure that an infusion of ad revenue towards the Beto campaign would make a huge difference. The Democrats would be winning in the Rio Grande Valley if only you kept reiterating the failed policies that are driving the Latino vote away from you in the first place. Hey, we want to open the border. Hey, get all of your friends and relatives to walk across the border. We want them to be able to do that. Yeah, that's a winning message. Hey, we're going to inflate all of your savings until they're goddamn irrelevant so that all of that which your parents did, they came across the border and worked 60 hours a fucking week to make ends meet. We want to fuck their savings in the ass in order to pay for more solar panels. That's a winning message to get the Latino voters. Battle Elf, if you don't vote Brandon, you ain't taco. Yeah, I remember Jill Biden and her mayonnaise tacos. 412 veto, just off the night shift after listening to hardcore leftist spew debunked propaganda for 8 straight hours. Can't keep my mouth shut any longer. Clank. By the way, no more super chats, please. I've got several more to go through here, and got to get through them. Aaron C., I'm glad you don't think so. I've been struggling with panic attacks worrying about nukes, honestly. Well, I mean, if you're in an urban area, you'll get vaporized. It's probably the least unpleasant death you can wish for because it'll destroy your cells faster than nerve conduction velocity. If you're in the outlands, you might get some radiation, but you'll probably be fine, and then you can scavenge the wasteland. I look at it as a positive if there's a nuclear war. A lot of morons will die. Yeah, sounds okay to me. As long as the morons at the top that press the button are among the dead. Sebastian Monroe, my shroom trip was a very good one. I only wish I could talk to you about it while tripping to analyze what you think, but alas, you're a busy man. I found it hard to do anything when I was on mushrooms. I remember I was trying to record myself. I was trying to make a video. This is back in like 2008 or some shit like that. But when I came out of it and checked the recordings, I had made like 50 different like 5-second recordings because I lost track of time and didn't know what the fuck was going on. So I said, oh, those would be interesting videos. Let me get right on that. And then I went to sleep. Yeah, now the other cat has arrived and most people didn't even notice the difference. Yeah, apparently there's a big-ass hurricane hurtling towards Florida right now, and a typhoon headed towards the Philippines. I don't know if it's made landfall yet. I'll probably look at a stream later or something. Those can be comfy, especially if chat is open, because people start flipping out, and none of the people flipping out are ever in the actual storm, and have never gone through one. Like, I've never been through a hurricane. It's like, my dad told a story once. He was in California for a while. I think he was on leave. This was during the Vietnam War era. And, they had an earthquake, which is an hourly occurrence there. And my dad was all panicked about it, and they were laughing at him because, of course, he had never experienced an earthquake before because Vermont doesn't really get earthquakes. Closest thing, I have experienced an earthquake before. There was one up in Montreal, and it reverberated down far enough, so there was some shaky when I was like 10 back in Woodstock. He had never felt that before. And I imagine it'd be similar for like a hurricane or a tornado. So, a level 1 tornado starts going by and, people who are out of state, they go fleeing into the root cellar. And I imagine that all the people that are like native to Tornado Alley, they find it fucking hilarious. It's like a Floridian dealing with a hurricane or something. Worst thing is when the hurricane leaves the areas that are relatively flat and coastal where they normally make landfall and dump a bunch of moisture. And they manage to take that moisture and go to a place like Vermont with Hurricane Irene. Because what happens when a shit ton of rain falls in a flat area? You get some flooding, a few inches of water, because it dumped 5 inches of water. But everything's flat. There's no hills and gradients for it to pour into one place. Now imagine it happens in Vermont where it's 95% mountain and hill. There is no level land. All of that water came right gushing out of the mountains and blasted right through the valleys. I made a video about that at the time, actually, when it was the eye of the storm, when the eye was going over. I went out and got footage. The road out behind the house was completely decimated. It was completely torn apart. I was cautious about getting too close to it because I figured the ground might give way, and I really didn't want to end up drowning that day. Although that would have been interesting. I wasn't streaming. YouTube didn't have live streaming at the time, or I would have gotten closer. All right, everyone. Here you watch me slowly die. And then the camera would be parked on my drowning face as I'm half out of the water and slowly going cold. That would have been pretty epic, actually. Would have been a popular video. Lizard Party. Hi, Sticks. Thoughts on current working environment? I make 25 to 30 doing Uber Eats. That beats most jobs today. Tech revolution. 25 to 30 is pretty good, yeah. Yeah, do you ever dip into the food? Don't answer that in case the answer is yes. I'm a song. I was in New Hampshire during the flood of 2005. Lost a bridge. And when Irene went through it, but washed out, God, I think it was 13, 14 bridges, including a couple of historical ones. Took out roads. It took out entire villages. Brandon, I know the irony here, only got repaired last year. Like they finally shored everything up and improved the sidewalks and roads and everything and buttressed it against its stream. It looks, by the way, a lot better now in Brandon. It's a nicer town because of Irene half destroying it. But I remember it took years. Mr. Scruffles, what's your stance on desexing male cats? Is it ethical or a violation of their bodily rights? I plan on getting a cat myself and want to know. I do not believe it's a violation of natural rights to neuter or spay your cats because they are not human beings. Ryan McDonald, USA, have you checked out the All In podcast before? No, I have not. Anyway, I think that I'm going to go off now. I mean, it's a weekend, so fewer people tend to show up anyway. Almost 4,000 at peak, though. That's pretty good for Sunday early in the morning. I realize most people fucking sleep in. Got through the news. Don't worry, another live stream tomorrow and pretty much every day thereafter. No literary update possibly until Monday or even Tuesday, sadly, because Amazon bounced one of the works. I accidentally misfiled it copyright-wise, and so now I have to fucking redo it, so it takes at least an extra day. Yeah, wonderful for me. Press the wrong button and get it blocked and waste 48 fucking hours of my life. That's about all. Peace out.